May 17, 2010. Thursday. Evening. He hit me again today. This is the 12th time this month. Because I didn't bring him dinner when I came home, he dragged me by my hair into the bathroom. He held my neck and pushed me into the water, tied my hands with a belt, and forced me to eat cigarette butts. I struggled desperately, crying and begging, but it was useless. Robert Smith is a monster. One day, he will end me. But I am his own daughter. Why does he treat me like this? If there really is a deity in this world, please, save me. With trembling hands, I slowly rolled up the blood-stained and tear-soaked note and threw it into the message bottle. Suddenly, the note seemed to be opened by an invisible hand, and a new line of text appeared. If your dad hits you again, go to 103 Wutong Street and find Jiang Smith. He will help you. The powerful handwriting was completely different from my childish script. I rubbed my eyes, and the line was still there. The message bottle was given to me a week ago by an elderly man with a disability. It was pouring rain, and I had been sent out by Robert Smith to buy alcohol. As I passed under the bridge, the bottle fell at my feet from the old man's hand. I picked it up and handed it back to him, but he refused.
A little deity lives in this bottle, and it has chosen you.
I didn't pay much attention to his words and treated the bottle like a tree hollow, pouring my sorrows into it every day. I never expected to receive a reply. Shocked, I picked up a pen and carefully wrote a few words. Are you the deity of the bottle? Did you hear my plea and come to save me?
Sort of. Anyway, go find Jiang Smith. He will help you.
But I don't know this person. Will he believe what I say? The note remained silent for a long time. Just when I thought the bottle deity's magic had run out, another line of text appeared.
Just tell him you can help his mom get a divorce.
Huh? I stared blankly at the line, unable to make sense of it. After that, no matter how much I questioned, the bottle did not respond again. That night, I kept checking the writing on the note, barely daring to believe I wasn't dreaming. There really was a deity that heard my plea. The next day, while Robert Smith was still asleep, I quietly slipped out the door. Following the route I had checked the night before, I transferred several times before arriving at Wutong Street. It was a place I had never been to before, with towering phoenix trees basking in the sunlight. I counted the houses one by one until I stood in front of number 103. Clutching my backpack strapped tightly, I nervously rang the doorbell. A kind-looking middle-aged woman opened the door.
Hello, who are you looking for?
Swallowing hard, I replied. I'm looking for Jiang Smith.
You must be John's classmate. He just went out to buy something. Come in and wait. He'll be back soon.
No, that's okay. I'll just wait at the door.
It's no trouble at all.
She gently pulled me inside. John hasn't brought a classmate home in a long time. We can't let you wait outside. Her palm was warm and soft, but there was a noticeable bruise on her arm, which became visible with her movements. Perhaps my gaze was too obvious, as the woman quickly let go of my hand, her expression a bit uneasy.
Have a seat. I'll go wash some fruit.
I sat awkwardly on the sofa, watching the clock's hands move slowly. Several times, I thought about getting up and leaving. It seemed absurd to come to someone's house based on a few vague words. Clutching the note in my pocket, I began to doubt my sanity. But then I thought of that drunken, terrifying face, the belt that had struck me countless times, and the faint pain in my back. My heart tightened, and I forced myself to stay. Maybe there really was someone who could help me. Half an hour later, light footsteps sounded outside, and a tall figure appeared in the doorway.
Who are you?
I stood there, staring at him blankly, momentarily forgetting to introduce myself.
My mom said you're my classmate. Why don't I recognize you? Which class are you in?
The young man, with his clear and handsome features, looked at me with a mix of wariness and confusion. I tried to respond, Class 10, 11.
Our school doesn't have an 11th class.
John leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, scrutinizing me.
What's your name? How did you find my house? What do you want here?
A barrage of questions left me dizzy. I opened my mouth but couldn't utter a word.
What? Didn't prepare your story before lying?
I felt even more embarrassed, my face heating up as I almost wanted to flee. Suddenly, John stood up straight, his body tensing like a panther sensing danger in the forest.
Get inside the room.
Huh? Before I could react, John stepped forward and pushed me into the nearest room. Immediately, I heard the screeching of brakes, cursing, the sound of glass breaking, and fighting. I stared intently at the violently shaking door, suddenly understanding what "you can help his mom get a divorce" meant. Whether it was the bruises on John's mother or the man's rampant cursing, I was all too familiar with it. John was also living under the shadow of domestic violence. How can someone in pain help another person in the same pain? I suddenly flung open the door and shouted. Stop. I've called the police. But the scene I had imagined of John covered in blood didn't happen. He had a strange man pinned against the wall by his collar, his right hand raised high, his expression fierce and ruthless. His lip was slightly cut, while the man's face was so bruised and swollen it was unrecognizable.
You called the police?
No, I was just trying to scare him. John curled his lips into a slight smile, stepped back, and released the man.
David Smith, I'm warning you, if you touch my mom again, I'll beat you every time I see you.
To hell with you. I should have finished you all off back then.
John kicked him in the leg.
Try cursing again.
Linda Smith, come out and see the good son you've raised, beating up his own father.
The door to the opposite room opened a crack, and John's mother timidly stepped out, trying to mediate.
John, maybe let it go. After all, he is your dad. Mom!
David took the opportunity to grab the wallet on the table and ran out. Outside, the engine roared to life, and David shouted a threat.
You little brat, just you wait.
Narrator, tone, serious in the room, John Smith lifted the hem of his short sleeve and skillfully applied some ointment.
John Smith, tone. Mocking, you mean to tell me a message in a bottle led you to seek my help?
Narrator, tone, shy. I lowered my head, unsure where to look, and mumbled a quiet affirmation.
John Smith, tone. Mocking, ha. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old? John Smith, tone. Unfriendly. If you have nothing better to do, go out and buy a set of problems to solve. Stop bothering me.
Narrator, tone, shy. I stiffened, and a sentence slipped out of my mouth. Narrator, tone, serious. If you help me, I can help your mom get a divorce. Narrator, tone, terrified. John's movements suddenly halted. He turned his head slightly, his cold gaze falling on me like a wolf eyeing its prey. Narrator, tone, terrified. A shiver ran down my spine, and the air became eerily still. Narrator, tone, hopeful. Just when I thought my plea had failed, John suddenly spoke.
John Smith, tone. Serious, hand it over.
Narrator, tone, confused. What?
John Smith, tone. Serious, the note. Didn't you say the message appeared on a note? Let me see if it's real.
Narrator, tone, shy. I hesitantly handed him the note, which was slightly damp from being clenched in my hand for so long. Narrator, tone, serious. After about 2 or 3 minutes, John tossed the note back at me and abruptly stood up.
John Smith, tone, serious. Let's go. I'll take you back.
Narrator, tone, surprised. I was taken aback and quickly waved my hands. Narrator, tone, shy. No, it's fine. As long as you agree to help me, I can.
John Smith, tone, mocking. What are you thinking? For a brute like that, if he hits you once, you should hit him back 10 times on the spot. Are you really planning to wait until he's done before asking for help?
Narrator, tone, sad. I can't win.
John Smith, tone, friendly. That's why I'm helping you now, to make sure he doesn't dare try it again.
Narrator, tone, relieved. Oh. Narrator, tone, serious. I slung my backpack over my shoulder and followed him, nervously asking. Narrator, tone, hopeful. If we can't beat him, can we call the police?
John Smith, tone, serious.
Narrator, tone, serious. Silence fell over the room as John considered the question. John Smith dropped me off at the entrance of the neighborhood. The moment I saw the rusty iron gate of my house, it felt like a giant hand was squeezing all the air out of my lungs. My chest tightened as if a 1,000-pound weight was pressing down on it. My legs went weak, and my instinct was to run away.
Wait here. I'm going to the convenience store.
I nodded. John took a few steps and then turned back suddenly.
Stay right here. Don't go anywhere.
Okay.
After John left, I kept my eyes fixed on that gate, terrified that Robert Smith might suddenly burst out. Every person who walked past me made me anxious. Any middle-aged man who even remotely resembled Robert Smith filled me with immense dread. I silently counted the seconds, hoping John would come back soon. But in the next moment, a pair of large, foul-smelling hands suddenly grabbed my hair.
You worthless brat, standing here just to flirt with men?
Robert Smith tightened his grip around my neck and started dragging me home. I struggled desperately, but the neighbors, accustomed to such scenes, hurriedly walked away. Occasionally, a passerby would try to help, only to be driven away by Robert Smith's foul language.
Let go!
Robert Smith slapped me hard across the face.
Running away like your worthless mother? I'll teach you a lesson today.
Dazed and with a ringing in my ears, my mouth filled with a metallic taste.
I feed you and clothe you, and this is how you repay me? Trying to run away, you ungrateful wretch.
Robert Smith kicked me in the stomach. Watching me writhe in pain on the ground seemed to excite him even more.
You wretched girl. I'll make sure you never run again.
He looked around and suddenly lifted a large garbage can high above his head.
No!
I closed my eyes in terror and despair, praying for some divine intervention. Save me! Time seemed to stretch endlessly, and the anticipated pain never came. Trembling, I opened my eyes to see John standing in front of me. He had a firm grip on Robert Smith's arm, pushing him back several steps. The garbage can fell to the ground with a loud clang.
Didn't I tell you to wait for me?
John turned to look at me, sunlight glinting off his hair and eyes, creating a halo effect. With tears in my eyes, I pointed at Robert Smith and, for the first time in my life, tattled.
He dragged me over here.
John ran a hand through his hair in frustration and sneered.
I hate it when people touch my things without permission.
The next moment, John dragged Robert Smith into a nearby alley. In the city of S, summer arrives as early as May. The evening sun blazes hot, and an old electric fan creaks as it turns. John Smith leaned back on the worn-out sofa, a fine layer of sweat forming on his forehead.
Why are you sitting so far away? Come closer.
Oh,
Emily slowly moved 3 centimeters closer, catching a slight breeze.
What, are you afraid of me?
you were really impressive just now.
Thinking about the earlier scene, Emily felt a mix of excitement and relief. The beastly, ruthless man, when faced with someone stronger, would also cry and beg pitifully for mercy. She suddenly understood something. When facing domestic violence, silent endurance would still result in the belt being raised, but fighting back with all one's might offer a glimmer of hope.
Is it just you and that person living here?
Yeah.
Oh,
Silence fell between them again. Emily stared blankly at the beer bottles on the floor. She grew up with her grandfather, and when he passed away when she was 7, she was brought to the city. It was nothing like she had imagined. Robert Smith was a heavy drinker, a gambler with a bad temper. When he lost at cards, he would demand money from her mom, and if she didn't give it, he would hurt her. Eventually, Emily's mom couldn't take it anymore and left one early morning, packing her things and running away. Emily was actually awake that night, but she didn't dare call out to her. She knew that if she made a sound, her mom's resolved decision would waver.
Emma Smith? Is this your name?
John somehow found an old elementary school award certificate. Emily's face turned red.
I go by Emily Smith now. Emma Smith is too childish.
Is it? Emma.
Though it was just a simple name, for some reason, when he said it, it felt like it was wrapped in sugar, making Emily's ears burn.
Stop calling me that.
Well, you finally show some temper. I thought you were just a pushover.
Emily pressed her lips together, saying nothing. John, acting as if he owned the place, wandered around the living room.
Where's the first aid kit? You need to treat the injury on your face, or it'll swell even more by tomorrow.
It was only then that Emily realized the pain. She fetched the first aid kit from the room, and John took a cotton swab and approached her.
No, I can do it myself.
Can you see it yourself? Don't move.
The cool antiseptic touched Emily's face, its strong smell mixed with a faint lemon scent. She sneaked a glance at John, the sunset outlining his chiseled jawline, casting a shadow on the mottled wall.
Keep staring, and I'll have to charge you.
Startled, Emily quickly looked away.
All right, don't get it wet for the next couple of days.
Thank you.
Just a verbal thank you?
Emily clenched her fingers, taking out all the money she had.
This is all I have. If it's not enough, I'll pay you back when I earn more. I can write an IOU.
I'm just teasing you, silly.
He flicked her forehead and said,
I'm leaving. Lock the door properly when you're alone at home.
Emily stared blankly at him until his figure disappeared around the corner. On a whim, she ran to the balcony. Under the orange-red sunset, his shadow stretched long. He suddenly turned back, their eyes met, and he flashed a bright smile.
I'm off.
This was the most comfortable night Emma had ever experienced. No noisy TV, no sudden outbursts, no harsh scolding. She lay in bed, gazing at the myriad lights outside the window, feeling a surreal sense of tranquility.
Oh, I haven't thanked the bottle spirit yet.
Emma quickly got up, wrote down the day's events, and sincerely expressed her gratitude. Tossing the note into the drift bottle, she anxiously awaited a reply. 1 minute, 2 minutes. The note inside the bottle suddenly trembled. Emma hurriedly took it out and saw a new sentence.
As long as he's willing to help you, that's good.
John Smith is amazing and brave, the most courageous person I've ever met. Thank you, bottle spirit, for bringing him into my life.
No need to thank me. He didn't do much, just a fight. He does that often.
For some reason, this sentence made Emma feel uneasy. After much hesitation, she solemnly wrote another note.
But there are many who can fight, only he truly wanted to help me. To me, John Smith is like you, a divine presence.
There was no further reply. Unable to resist the drowsiness, Emma slowly fell asleep. The next morning, Emma grabbed a bun from the fridge for breakfast and headed downstairs while eating. When she reached the bottom, she suddenly saw John Smith.
What are you doing here?
John sat on his bike, one leg on the ground.
Isn't it obvious? I'm here to take you to school.
You rode all the way from home?
John's house was at least 2 kilometers away, which meant he had to get up before 6.
What else? Fly over? Hurry up, we're going to be late.
John took Emma's backpack and tossed it into the basket. The morning breeze lifted John's clothes and brushed against Emma's cheeks. As they entered Academy Road, they saw more and more classmates, and Emma could faintly hear their discussions.
Hey, wasn't that John Smith from the neighboring school? Looks like him. The girl in the back seems to be wearing our school uniform. Which class? Anyone know her?
The murmurs grew louder. Emma didn't like drawing attention. As soon as John stopped the bike, she darted away like a rabbit, but John stretched out his long arm, hooked her backpack, and pulled her back.
Why are you running?
Emma kept her head down, standing in the shadow of a tree to avoid the stairs. John paused, slightly turned to shield her, and coldly glanced at the onlookers. The oppressive gazes disappeared, and Emma dared to look at him.
Scaredy cat! Our school has an extra 20 minutes of evening study. Wait for me in the classroom after school.
I heard you.
John smiled with satisfaction, pushed off with his long legs, and headed into the neighboring school. It wasn't until I sat down in the classroom that I suddenly realized I had heard this name long ago, John Smith.
John Smith, John Smith.
He had appeared on the honor roll of the neighboring school and had been mentioned in announcements.
Back then, I paid no attention to such trivial matters and quickly forgot about it.
Rumor had it that John Smith was quite an extraordinary person, excelling in academics but also known for getting into fights.
One moment he'd be receiving an award, and the next he'd be holding a microphone, reading an apology.
But what people talked about the most was his appearance, a handsome and slightly rebellious young man who drew everyone's attention just by standing there.
Under normal circumstances, I would never dare to approach someone like him. But now,
thinking of John Smith made my heart race a little, so I pressed my hand to my chest and took a deep breath.
Emma Smith, stop overthinking. There are only 43 days left until the college entrance exam.
Shaking off my chaotic thoughts, I focused intently on the teacher's lecture.
Once the exams are over, I can leave this place and completely break free from Robert Smith.
Robert Smith never gave me any living expenses. Fortunately, before my mom passed away, she left me a bank card. The amount wasn't much, but it was enough to cover my high school tuition for 3 years. However, I had to be frugal with my daily expenses.
I couldn't afford to top up my meal card, so I usually scavenged some food from the fridge at home to take to school. I ate whatever I could find, but I couldn't take anything too expensive, or Robert Smith would get angry.
I had just swallowed a bite of cold steamed bun when a boy from another class suddenly approached me.
Emily Smith, John wants you to go to the old locust tree.
The old locust tree was a code name for a gap in the back wall of the playground, pushed open by tree roots. When I got there, John Smith was already waiting. He stood by the wall, holding 2 lunchboxes in one hand and talking on the phone with the other. Seeing me arrive, he immediately hung up the phone and handed one of the lunchboxes through the gap.
I bought too much. Help me eat one.
Thanks, how much do I owe you?
No need, someone else bought it for me.
Oh,
I awkwardly held the warm lunchbox, knowing full well that there was no bought too much. It was just an excuse John made so I wouldn't refuse.
Eat up. Why are you just holding it?
here?
Yeah,
John sat cross-legged by the gap without any concern for appearances. I mimicked him and opened the lunchbox. Inside were steaming green pepper beef strips and a large chicken leg. John ate quickly, finishing in a few bites, then chewed on some gum while watching me.
you eat like.
What?
I reflexively wiped the oil from my mouth.
Like a hamster.
John puffed out his cheeks, mimicking a hamster's chewing motion. I couldn't help but laugh.
Emma Smith, from now on, eat with me.
I was momentarily stunned, and John quickly explained.
I don't mean anything by it. It's just that our school's cafeteria has a really strong smell of cooking oil, and it makes me feel sick. Eating alone here feels pretty silly, so I thought I'd find someone to keep me company.
Oh,
What does O mean?
I stayed silent, and John anxiously poked me.
Say something. Will you agree or not?
I looked up at him. The bright eyes of the young boy were filled with nervousness and anticipation, as if he wasn't just asking me to eat with him but something more important, hidden between his words.
I agree.
Less than 20 minutes after evening study ended, John Smith suddenly appeared at our classroom door. He was panting heavily, his school uniform sleeves rolled up, revealing his bony wrists.
Aren't you supposed to still be in class?
I skipped.
Why? It's almost time to go home.
John grabbed my backpack and slung it over his shoulder, nonchalantly.
Why so many questions? I felt like skipping, so I did.
I pressed my lips together and followed him. Just as we were about to leave the school grounds, I mustered the courage to tug at his shirt hem.
John, please don't skip classes anymore, okay? The college entrance exams are coming up.
John raised an eyebrow and leaned in close.
Are you worried I won't get into college?
No.
With John's grades, as long as he didn't give up, he was sure to get into college.
I want to go to University A with you.
Why with me?
Yes, why with John? I opened my mouth but couldn't find the words. When I first got the college application form, my immediate thought was to go to the same school as John.
Emma Smith, you must have been a rabbit in your past life, always running away after teasing.
John walked me to my doorstep. The light was on in the 4th floor window. My heart tightened. Robert Smith was home.
I'll go up first. Wait for my signal.
No. I'll go with you.
I couldn't stop Robert from coming home, and John couldn't always be there to protect me. I had to learn to face him and stand up for myself. When we opened the door, the place looked ransacked, with things thrown everywhere. My bedroom door was wide open, and Robert was rummaging through my things.
What are you doing?
Robert looked up, his eyes bloodshot and murky.
Mind your own business.
John sneered, knocking on the doorframe.
Get out.
Robert's face turned pale. Like a wild bear, he shoved past me and left. Just as he was about to step out, I remembered something.
Stop. Where's the bank card my mom gave me?
Robert froze, then bolted. John leaped over the railing and slid down. I followed them into the alley but lost sight of them.
John.
The maze-like alleys felt like a giant labyrinth. My anxiety grew, and I called out John's name frantically, but there was no response. Terrifying thoughts raced through my mind, and I couldn't stop trembling. Tears blurred my vision.
Why are you crying?
A familiar voice came from behind. I spun around, and for a moment the world blurred and receded, leaving only John's figure clear and vivid. Emma couldn't hold back her tears any longer. The floodgates opened, and she almost cried all the way to the bank.
No wonder Robert Smith said girls are made of water. If you keep crying like this, you'll dry up. He handed her a tissue and sighed.
I'm sorry. I just can't seem to stop.
John handed her the bank card.
Go check at the ATM. See if any money is missing.
Emma checked the balance and found it intact. She withdrew $500 before returning the card.
Here, take this.
What's this? A service fee?
No, there's a digital store on Dongxing Road that sells surveillance equipment. Install it at home. If that person tries to harm Auntie again, you'll have evidence to take legal action.
It's useless. I've tried everything you suggested. My mom doesn't want a separation.
Why not?
John walked to the wall, rubbing a lighter between his fingers. He lit a cigarette, the smoke blurring his features.
I can't understand what my mom is holding on to. I've told her more than once, separation, separation, separation. I'll handle all the hassle. I'll hire the lawyer, fill out the paperwork, gather the evidence.
John's voice cracked as he punched the wall.
When I had everything ready, she told me she didn't want to separate anymore. She always sacrifices herself, thinking a broken family would affect me. She endures it, gets bullied, and then cries to me, saying it's all for my sake. But who asked her to do it for me? Who wants a father like that?
John took a deep breath, his Adam's apple moving rapidly.
It would have been better if she never had me in the first place. That way, she could have escaped her misery sooner.
The moonlight that night bore witness to their shared pain. After returning home, Emma couldn't shake off the feeling. She looked at the bottle half filled with paper slips and asked the bottle god,
Is life always this hard, or is it just now?
Just now.
Emma closed her eyes and forced a smile.
Just now is enough.
Since that day, Robert Smith had not returned for several days. As the college entrance exams approached, my stress levels increased. The only time I felt relieved was during the walk home with John Smith.
Hey Emma, don't stress too much. You'll ace the exams, I know it.
Thanks, John. Walking home with you really helps me relax.
Sometimes, when I couldn't sleep in the middle of the night, I felt embarrassed to disturb John, so I would chat with Bottle God. He was like an unseen elder, patiently addressing my worries and offering just the right amount of care.
Bottle God, I can't figure out this math problem. Can you help me?
Of course, Emma. Let's go through it step by step.
One night, while discussing a math problem with Bottle God, I suddenly heard a dull thud, followed by the sound of someone entering the living room. Based on my previous experience, I had changed the lock and installed a peephole on my door. In the living room, two unfamiliar men were pressing Robert Smith for money.
Where's the money? Grabbing Robert's hair and slamming his head against the table corner.
Please, Mr. Cohen, give me 2 more days. I'll pay you back as soon as I have the money.
Yeah, right. Pressing Robert's right hand onto the table and pulling out a machete. The rule is 1 day late, 1 hand.
Wait. Mr. Cohen, I have a daughter. She's a virgin, just like her mother, very appealing to men. You can sell her to a nightclub, she'll definitely make money.
In an instant, I felt like I had fallen into an icy abyss, my blood running cold.
Emma, open the door. Daddy has something to discuss with you.
I stepped back a few paces to the window. The phone was in the living room, and the only person I could contact was Bottle God. With trembling hands, I wrote down my current situation and sent it to him. The knocking grew louder, the doorframe shaking violently. Robert might break in at any moment. A note popped up with Bottle God's reply, "Fire."
I immediately understood his suggestion. I set the bedsheet on fire and leaned out the window, shouting at the top of my lungs.
Help! Fire! There's a fire on the 4th floor of the Smith residence.
When individual interests are threatened, people might not come to help, but when collective interests are at risk, someone will surely step in. Humans instinctively avoid harm, and shouting fire is often more effective than shouting help. Sure enough, within 3 to 5 minutes, lights came on in every apartment, and the sound of people rushing towards my home filled the air. My legs gave way, and I collapsed by the window. Finally, I had escaped another peril. Robert Smith brought back 2 individuals with questionable backgrounds, and he himself was detained for 6 months due to gambling and burglary. When he was released from the police station, the sky was still filled with stars, and standing beneath them was John Smith.
I'm sorry.
I forced a smile at him, and John suddenly pulled me into his arms.
No need to apologize, it's not your fault.
John hugged me tighter, and as I inhaled the fresh lemon scent from him, my tense heart finally felt a sense of grounding. That night, John stayed at my place. Lying in bed, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. My mind was a whirlwind of Robert Smith's menacing face, blazing flames, and that lemon-scented embrace.
Can't sleep?
A voice came from the sofa, the faint moonlight outlining John's figure.
A little.
John suddenly got up and pushed the sofa next to my bed, then lay down on it. The distance between us was now minimal, and I nervously shrank under the covers.
Don't worry. I won't cross any boundaries.
John turned his head to look at me, his clear eyes sparkling like stars. I slowly poked my head out from under the covers, and John chuckled softly.
I've been through something similar before.
John rested one hand behind his head, as if recounting someone else's story.
When I was 13, David Smith overdosed and went around the house with a kitchen knife.
As John spoke, he rolled up his sleeve to reveal a scar that looked like a centipede.
See, this is from him.
My heart tightened suddenly, and my fingers instinctively reached out to touch it.
Did it hurt?
You were smart to use fire to draw attention. I used the same method back then.
But John's gaze turned melancholic as he stared into the void.
I was planning to go down with him.
No!
I suddenly gripped John's arm tightly, cold sweat breaking out on my back, as if I could really see young John engulfed in flames.
John, promise me, never give up on life, no matter what.
In the darkness, he stared at me, seemingly surprised.
All right, I promise you.
I slowly relaxed, then realized how close we were. I could almost feel his breath. My face flushed red, and I hurriedly withdrew my hand and shrank back under the covers.
Why are you hiding? Weren't you just all brave?
Oh, I'm so tired. We have exams tomorrow, let's sleep early.
John flicked my forehead lightly through the covers and whispered,
Good night.
The joint exam was the final major test before the college entrance examination, encompassing all the top high schools in City A. Students were randomly assigned numbers and exam rooms to simulate the real test.
I was lucky to be assigned to John Smith's school.
But 10 minutes before the exam, Emma hadn't heard from John. She went to his class to inquire.
Where's John? Has anyone seen him?
He left after a phone call from home during the morning self-study session.
A strong sense of unease gripped Emma. John wouldn't skip an exam without a reason. Something must have happened at home. Without hesitation, she ran out of the school gate, hailed a cab, and headed to John's house. To be safe, she called the police on the way. Inside the house at 103 Wutong Street, the scene was grim. John sat in a corner, covered in injuries, holding a pair of blood-stained scissors. David lay in front of him, blood seeping from his abdomen.
John!
John looked up, his bright eyes clouded with darkness. His eyes were red, and he choked out.
Emma, what should I do? I can't go to University A anymore.
Emma shuddered and slowly approached him, her white sneakers stained with sticky red.
It's okay, we won't go to University A.
She stayed quietly by his side until the police arrived. At the police station, John's mother took all the blame upon herself. The interrogating officer slammed the table.
If you tell the truth, we can consider it self-defense. If you keep lying, I'll suspect intentional harm.
John spoke slowly.
It was me. He was using illegal substances and got high, then started hitting my mom. A neighbor called me, and when I got home, I saw him with a needle, trying to inject my mom with drugs. I fought with him and accidentally hurt him.
The police asked many more details. John's mother listened in a daze, tears streaming from her empty eyes. That night, Emma went home and wrote countless notes praying for John's safety but received no response. A week later, the official college entrance exam took place. As Emma walked out of the exam hall, white doves flew across the sky. Everyone had a relieved smile on their faces, but she stood there, staring blankly at the passing police van, trembling with sobs. Suddenly, a note fell before her eyes, the familiar strong handwriting read.
Emma, don't cry. Wait for me one last time at University A.
1 year later. Under the scorching September sun, the welcome tents at a university stretched for hundreds of meters. After finishing with a group of new students, Emma Smith sat under a locust tree to rest. A gentle breeze blew, carrying a faint lemon scent that brushed past her nose. She was momentarily lost in thought until a shadow suddenly appeared before her.
Whispering John Smith. Is that you?
Her eyes instantly filled with tears. The person flicked her forehead and sighed helplessly.
Friendly Emma Smith, you're about to cry like a rabbit.
Emma abruptly looked up and threw herself into his arms, hugging him tightly and sobbing.
Sad. John Smith, why did it take you so long to get here?
Hopeful. I had some things to sort out, Emma, but I'm here now, and I won't leave your side again.
The gentle breeze continued to blow, carrying the faint lemon scent, as the two friends reunited under the locust tree, their bond stronger than ever.